Over the last 10 days or so, we've seen two real-world automotive manufacturers introduce official content for Assetto Corsa, a title which, well, it hasn't seen any official releases from the developer since 2017. This understandably raises some interesting questions, and that is the purpose of today's video. Hello fellow sim racers. First of all, if you haven't already seen, KTM have released a version of their Crossbow GT4 for Assetto Corsa, and Ferrari have announced a 488 challenge that you can own by registering for the online leaderboard challenge for their new Esport series. I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about those cars, because the stories behind both of them are actually quite interesting, and then I'm going to talk about the wider implications of all of this. We've been waiting on the Ktm Crossbow Gt4 in Assetto Corsa for a very long time. It's been a bit of an open secret that this car was planned as an official release as part of one of the DLC packs, but for one reason or another, it never saw the light of day. The car is a collaboration between Sim Department and KTM, with the latter informing a lot of the development of the physics side. Interesting, this is the Crossbow GT4 Unleashed. The versions that you may have raced in other sims have been heavily pegged back by the extensive BOP measures needed to keep that little rocket ship in the same performance window as the other GT4s. For example, I've seen quotes suggesting that the Crossbow has to carry around 150 to 200 kilograms of ballast depending on the series. Moreover, most also raise the ride height to kill off the aero efficiency as well. Not so here, and this thing goes like hell. It's multiple seconds per lap quicker than the ACC version, and it feels a lot more agile too. Moving on to the Ferrari, which I don't have any footage for because there is no way in hell that I'm going to politely borrow video from their official release trailer, so here's some more KTM. This is interesting for a few reasons. First of all, this has been developed by Kunos. Yep, this is their first piece of official content for Assetto Corsa since Q4 2017. And this car very much came out of nowhere. You can only get the car by signing up to set a qualifying time for the Ferrari Esports series, yeah, they pluralized it, which kicks off on August the 7th, but you can pre-register now, if you're in Europe that is. Sadly, this isn't open internationally, presumably for boring legal and logistical reasons. Anyhow, whatever the case, this is a big name, an interesting car, and a very interesting delivery method. So then, new cars are always welcomed, but that's not really the point of this video. I think, personally, the wider implications of this shouldn't be overlooked. First of all, the obvious bit. The relationship between automotive manufacturers and driving games has taken a really long time to forge. And it's probably fair to say that most of them are still waking up to the realization that video games are a really important tool for their marketing efforts. As it turns out, those teenagers that grew up on a diet of Gran Turismo eventually ended up being adults with wallets. And while it's not entirely fashionable for companies to think long-term in a world where the net worth of an executive is measured in end-of-quarter results, there has been a definite shift from the industry in a positive direction. This has been somewhat accelerated by esports, which offers an easily marketed competition product that's familiar to the automotive industry. But arguably it's not quite as simple as win on Sunday, sell on Monday, but that is very much a subject for another day. So then, it's interesting to see this KTM and the Ferrari. The former does seem like a fairly straightforward marketing exercise, while the latter is potentially a little bit more complex. The reason I mention this is that it would be very easy to get carried away with the thought that Ferrari has an appetite to create its own simulated race cars. This could well be a one-off, and I think it's very likely that it is, or at least a very limited situation, and it probably should be taken very much at face value unless we see something that speaks to the contrary. And that's a bit of a shame really, because it would be wonderful to imagine some utopian future in which car manufacturers and race teams manufactured their own sim racing cars for an open platform racing sim. Now, that really would be blurring the lines between the real and virtual. While I'm more than convinced that there is an appetite for this in the sim racing community, I'm really not sure the commercial considerations make sense though. I would love to be wrong. There is another aspect to this though. We recently saw just how important having the right content in a sim can be. The virtual 24 Hours of Le Mans race took place in rFactor 2, which was the only sim that had anywhere near the right content for that to happen. In fact, they sped through the development of their own Ferrari 488 in time to make that happen. So we're increasingly finding situations in which manufacturers, or race organisers in this case, are looking to sims for one reason or another, and that's where things do get a bit messy. I've said before that the hardcore sim market is actually a fairly crowded place, with lots of different products competing for a pretty small audience. Moreover, those products are competing over licenses to use real-world names, asset and designs in their titles. Looking at this from a manufacturer's perspective creates some interesting thoughts. First of all, with lots of competing buyers, the cost of licensing can be increased, especially if they're willing to grant an exclusive license. But then that limits visibility and it harms that long-tail marketing impact we talked about earlier. I know I've said it before, but I would love to know just how many modern Nissan GTRs are sold to people that grew up thrashing around Skyline R32s in the first Gran Turismo games. My point then, if there is one, is that perhaps the current licensing model is a bit restrictive, and maybe there does need to be a better route for manufacturers to bring their own products into the sim racing world. So that's about it, guys. Let me know your take on the subject in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in the future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.